and welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm your host for this evening. I'm Karen Stevens. Help me to introduce our usual panel, Miss Iris Acker, actress and producer of Spotlight on the Arts, Mr. William Hirschman, theater journalist and chief critic for FloridaTheaterOnStage.com, and our guest panelist today, filling in for the mischievous Michael McKeever, is the artistic director of Island City Stage, Mr. Andy Rogo. And our very special guest today is Miss Pam Deardon. She is the executive director of the Gold Coast Jazz Society. Help us to welcome her. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking me.
So let's start off with just the basics. Can you tell us about the Jazz Society, how it originated, how long it's been in operation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay.
Just to get some groundwork.
Well, this is our 25th anniversary year, and we started out in the hotel dining room of the Riverside Hotel. Fred Ruffner, who was a local book publisher and very active in the Library Foundation and a jazz fanatic, decided there wasn't enough jazz in South Florida, so he and a group of friends, avid jazz fans, started the Jazz Society by presenting concerts in the Riverside Hotel dining room.
Is that in Miami?
No, in Fort Lauderdale, on Las Olas.
Riverside,
yeah.
Riverside
Hotel,
okay.
yeah. And so it grew, and now we present concerts in the Broward Center in the Amatoro Theater from November through May. And we have education programs, a scholarship program, we do outreach programs, and all sorts of different kinds of activities.
Okay, so is this traditional jazz?
We like to say classic jazz and
classic
the Great
jazz?
American Songbook. Yeah.
Is there a core audience for that?
Yes, there is. Yeah, a lot of people. It's an older audience, I have to say, but you like symphonic music, kind of that same kind of demographic. But yeah, they like music, anything from New Orleans, where jazz started, I'd say up through the 50s. We're pretty traditional and classic, not kind of out there.
Yeah, no fusion or.
No, that's not what our audience likes. They like pretty much classic.
How would you define jazz? What is jazz?
Well, I don't think it has a specific definition because there are many kinds of genres of jazz, and of course jazz is ever changing, which is now it's kind of morphed more into the hip hop and that kind of genre, but jazz is definitely a basic music of America because it was all created here, so it's a national treasure, we like to say.
Does it take a special musician, a special kind of musician to play jazz?
Yes, I think it does. It takes a musician now musicians all have a lot of training because of college programs, things like that, and many are both classical and jazz musicians. They've learned how to play both kinds of music. A great example is Shelley Berg, who's the dean of the Frost School of Music. He's a fabulous jazz musician, but also a classical pianist as well. So,
to make sure that I'm clear, does the society have its own core of musicians, or do you bring in shows as well?
We primarily bring in shows.
Okay.
We bring in nationally recognized artists, and then we present the concerts at the Broward Center. But we also have a little core band that we book out for earning money, contracted service to keep it alive. So we do programs in schools and free outreach concerts in the community, and we have this jam session for students. So we pay the musicians to do those programs, but they're called the Gold Coast Jazz Society Band. They're part of our band. So
Jam sessions.
Jam sessions.
Do you do it with the children? Do the children get to perform in these jam sessions?
Yeah, they're the first Friday of the month from January through June, and then we invite area school students anywhere. We've had kids from elementary school through college. They come and we provide a trio, a professional trio. And then we have a gal, Nicole Yarling, who I think everybody probably knows. She facilitates it. Then we ask students to come in and they sit in and jam with the trio.
Oh, nice.
And jam with each other, and it's a lot of fun for the kids. And it's free and open to the public to come and listen.
Do we have a musician here? Do you play an instrument?
I used to play piano years ago, but it was never a jazz piano.
Okay, you were going to say, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Well, I was wondering, it seems to me that, early in jazz roots that, musicians formed or got fans from being in nightclubs.
Right.
That's how people discovered it, how they found musicians that they like. But how does a musician who wants to be a jazz musician now, how do they cultivate an audience?
Well, pretty much the same way. I mean, there still is, New York is still the mecca. You know, people want to go there, or LA, because a lot of studio musicians there. We have a ton of musicians in Miami who are, wonderful jazz musicians.
Do the venues exist for those people?
Not as much as it used to. I think in New York there are still several, so a lot of people want to go there. But I think the internet's going to be has been a big facilitator of jazz, and now, with iTunes and everything, everybody produces their own records now. The labels have all changed, and
I wanted to
everything like
ask
that,
about
so,
that, is how
yeah.
the digital world has changed the access or general access and the way to get the word out. I was trolling Facebook the other day, and somebody posted a group I'd never heard of called Snarky Puppy.
Oh yes, right.
And I was in
Yeah.
love. I just said, who are
they're
these
great,
people
yeah.
and how did I not ever hear of them?
Yeah,
And I found out about them solely because somebody had posted a video
Right.
on Facebook. Is there a lot of that going on? Is
Oh,
that
a lot
new
on
way things are
YouTube.
being done?
YouTube is a huge place for people to post their videos and recordings. Yeah, I think the recording industry, they all have gone into doing their own CDs and own audio files and labels. And of course, you don't hear much jazz radio anymore. No. I mean, we don't have anything down here except on WLRN. They play jazz, of course, and WDNA. But I mean, it's not on the other stations, so it's really hard for them to get out there.
To find out
Yeah,
where
to find
and
out
when.
where and when, yeah. And there aren't very many clubs here in South Florida anymore, so it's
there
difficult.
are jazz lovers. I mean, when
They
I know
are.
someone else, I love jazz.
Yeah.
And they say it's hard to find or it's sporadic.
Yeah.
Is there any place somebody could just say, I feel like going to jazz this evening, to a really good jazz? Is there some place to go?
There's not, I don't think there is a club anymore that does jazz 7 nights a week. In order to exist, they have to do all sorts of different kinds of music. There's Blue Jean Blues in Fort Lauderdale. They do a couple nights of jazz. Restaurants, are trying to put jazz, but that's really kind of background music. It's not really a performance, so to speak. So yeah, it's tough.
I'm
Really
sorry,
tough.
Karen.
No. So what can we attribute? And I have a linking question I'll ask a little later. But what can we contribute this kind of decline? I mean, because jazz it's a true art form. I don't think it's going anywhere. It's going to stay
No,
there.
it'll stay.
And just like anything, it goes through cycles, and
Right.
it becomes popular again. And then so with the decline of venues and that sort of thing, what's is it the rise of other art forms, of music that is kind of, or is this the people not being educated about jazz? What would you think has caused that?
Well, I think it's everything. Jazz was America's popular music for years and years. And then rock and roll came along. And that sort of took over. So jazz was still in the clubs and, it was a more sophisticated kind of music, perhaps. And I think people kind of felt that they had to be more educated to understand it. And then, in all honesty, some of the jazz musicians sort of went out there. Miles Davis, he unfortunately, the story goes, he would turn his back on the audience and play, which was kind of for him. And I think that sort of started that inaccessibility. What is it, the third wall in theater? Is that what it is?
Fourth wall.
Fourth wall in theater. Yeah, I was close.
Third one is stage right.
Well, it's sort of, I think that kind of happened, where you kind of lost that inner connection with the audience, and maybe I don't know if that was really what the start was, but pop music came along, and that had greater mass appeal, and so that's sort of what happened.
But there are little resurgences.
Yeah.
Tony Bennett
Yes.
is still at it.
Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga,
Yeah.
the late Natalie Cole,
Yes.
and several other people would suddenly
Yeah.
pop up on top 40 charts.
Right. Nora Jones.
Right, Nora
Jones,
Jones. That
Right.
you'd sit there and go, oh, huh.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there are other resurgences still to come. When we were growing up, we wouldn't get caught dead listening to this music. That isn't true, but we wouldn't get caught dead listening to this music.
Right.
We just do it in our bedrooms. But now there's nothing. Those lines seem to be blurring. That my generation and the next generation don't have any problem, switching around and hearing
Right.
Ramsey Lewis or something like that.
Well, I think a lot of it is, let's face it, commercially, it's more advantageous to do pop music than jazz.
Well, that's
and I think somebody like a Lady Gaga has a great opportunity because here she's got this wonderful relationship with Tony Bennett. She really knows how to sing jazz. She really does. And she could educate all these young people, all her little monsters. She should really do this. I think she should embrace that, and try to get that genre to be more popular with younger people, because let's face it, that's the only way it's going to survive, is if younger people, and not just the kids in jazz bands, who want to go be musicians, but if younger people embrace it and kind of say, well, we want to hear more of this music and get it back on the radio and get it on TV.
It also seems that,
like
it's less expensive for studios to just use all electronic music. And
Oh,
of course,
yes.
that's what all the young people are learning on, are just these massive computers,
Yep.
and that's how they create the music. Is there anybody in mainstream jazz that's actually trying to use these electronic gadgets or whatever to create?
I'm sure that there is. I can't say exactly who because I don't know. I'm more interested in acoustic jazz, so that's what I listen to. But I'm sure that some people have electronic.
Let's talk about the Gold Coast Jazz Society.
Well, okay.
I know that I found you by accident. I was at Art Serve, and I heard this wonderful music coming from, and I went over to speak to the leader, whatever it was, and I said, "Where have you been hiding?" He said, "No, where have you been hiding?" "We've been here. We are here." I said, "Well, I'd love to have you on my show and they'd talk about," and he said, "You have to go into the office and talk to Pam." And that's how you got here. And so here you were at the Art Serve Museum Library and
Gallery.
Yes, exactly. So I thought you were there like every week, like it's one day a week you're at.
Well, no, our office is located in Art Serve.
But you were they just rehearsing?
No, you came in on one of the jam sessions with the young people, because it was a Friday night.
Yes,
I remember that.
it was wonderful. It sounded great.
Yeah, that one of our jam sessions. So they were over in the gallery section, which is where we have the jam session, and I was over in the office doing some work.
It sounded wonderful. It really did.
Thank you.
And so the name Gold Coast, I knew the name. So the
Good.
name has gotten around. But
that's
how
good.
do you go out of your way to get it around? How do you approach Bill or Andy? To
bring
I say,
people in?
Is it all, are you online? What are you doing?
Okay. Well, we have a website, of course. Everybody has a website. We exist, we're a nonprofit, of course, and we exist through the generosity of our members who donate to keep the organization alive. We also have our subscribers who come to the Broward Center to our concert series. So we're just like the theater. I mean, we advertise on the radio, in print. We have our online version. We do e-blasts. We do direct mail. We do all of the things that everybody does to get the word out. And we're fortunate that we're funded by Broward County and the state of Florida and Funding Arts
Thank them
Broward.
very much, yes.
We have a lot of great donors.
How many subscribers do you have?
We have about 300 subscribers. So we have the Amateur Theater is roughly 600 seats, so half full of subscribers. It used to be all full of subscribers, but as we all know, that model is sort of changing. So it's harder because you've got to fill 300 seats with single ticket sales every time, or as much as you can. We average probably about $450, depending on the artist. The artist is the draw. And so last year we were lucky, we had 2 or 3 sellout concerts, so that was great. We were very happy about
Anything
that.
special you want to brag about
Anything
that has happened?
Well,
Guest artists or?
Well, this year we're in a partnership with the Broward Center, and we're bringing in Manhattan Transfer,
Oh,
one of my favorite groups.
Now they've got a name.
They've got a name, and they're pairing with Take Six.
Wow.
Oh, there you are.
And,
Wow.
and the show's
I'm
called
talking about
There
there
you
you
go.
are. But
That would be pretty.
what you mean there
And
you are?
that show's called The Summit. It's called Manhattan Transfer Meets Take Six, and the Broward Center was gracious enough to help co-present that concert with us for our 25th anniversary. So that's going to be at Parker Playhouse. So that's really exciting, I think.
Sure.
But we've had really the top people in jazz. Last year we had Dofeo Marsalis
Oh, yes.
quartet, which was a coup for us to have a Marsalis. And Ellis, the father, was part of that quartet, so that was really wonderful to have, kind of one of the royal families of jazz. And we had John Pizzarelli last year, again, one of the royal families of jazz, out there now. We've had people like Chico Hamilton, Scott Hamilton, Chico Hamilton, yeah, he was a fabulous drummer. Over 25 years, I can't really click off all of the names of every artist we've had, but Bill Charlap, Shelley Berg plays every year with us, and so we really
Is there anyone that you've had that you want to that people might not have a name recognition of, that you go, I want the world to know there is this person out here that you want to stop people on the street and shake them?
There are a lot of fabulous unknown jazz artists. And I think our challenge as a nonprofit is that we have to fill the house, that to remain financially viable. So that's always our challenge. We would like to bring kind of these unknown artists to the forefront and at least introduce them to our audience. But then again, we're a little leery because we'll get half a house, because the single ticket buyer doesn't know who this person is, because there's no radio station solely dedicated to jazz, and LRN does a great job to help promote us, as does DNA, and that's a challenge. So I don't think we get to do as much as we want of new and up-and-coming artists. We do try to feature on our series local people, because we realize there's just a great wealth of local people here that are fabulous musicians, and they don't really get enough exposure, so we try to utilize them too.
Are you a musician yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
But not a jazz musician.
Okay.
I was classically trained.
Okay.
And my degree's in voice, so choral music, really.
Okay.
So jazz is kind of far afield from my training, but I've been in arts administration for 30 years, so.
So, since so much music, so many of the music programs have been taken out of the schools, how do you develop new jazz artists, new jazz musicians?
New jazz music. Well, one thing we do is the jam sessions, because we ask any kid that wants to sit in, and then
But they have to have some kind of training at first, though,
they
right? I mean,
do.
they have to learn how to play the instrument. How are
Yeah.
they learning how to play instruments?
How they do
I
that.
learned in school. I played the violin,
Right.
in 5th grade. So
Yeah.
that's something that public schools provided, but now a lot
Yeah.
of that has been
It's
taken out.
taken
How
out,
are they
yeah.
learning? How are we going to have musicians in the future if nobody's teaching them?
well, we
other
do.
than private lessons.
Well, we do one program. It's called Jazz Slam, where we have a quartet, and the gal that runs that is Mari Bell. She's a jazz educator and a pianist, jazz pianist, and she's developed this program where she has linked in testing skills with jazz. So she has a quartet, and it's an hour-long program that we take out to 4th and 5th grade students to, one, introduce them to jazz, and then she teaches them some testing skill hints through the music, through reading and math, and then she hits a little history of jazz and a little geography of the movement of music into America and everything. So that sort of introduces the kids to jazz. And sometimes they say, oh, wow, I want to go play the drums, or I like how that guitarist played, or I want to play
nice.
the bass or whatever. So we go to about 20 to 30 schools every
that's
year
good.
with that program. So that's sort of an initial way to introduce them. Years ago, we had a program called Jazz for Wee Ones, where we would go out to after-school centers, with a trio, and they would play jazz, and that would sort of introduce jazz too, but we need funding for that program to get that going again. And then we work closely with Dillard High School, and we have a scholarship program which we were left with a large bequest. And so every year we send about 25 kids to either jazz camp, or if they're studying jazz in college, they get a tuition assistance scholarship. So I would say we give away about $40,000 in scholarship support every year.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And those kids go to, a lot of them are from Dillard or New World School of the Arts, and they can be from anywhere. We have this competition in April. And so they come, they apply, and then they come and compete. And we have a panel of judges who are jazz educators and musicians. And then they go to the camp of their choice. So they're going, and some of them go to the Brubeck Institute, or they go out to Stanford. They go wherever they want with tuition assistance, and then they come back to their jazz band, and they're better players.
You know who's given jazz? Woody Allen.
Woody Allen, yes.
Am I right? Because people go to see him thinking he's going to be funny, and he just, it's clarinet.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he plays, and he loves it. And and that's it. That's what he does. He leaves afterwards. He doesn't talk when he goes to these. But I read about them every time, more or less, when he does play.
A lot of actors do that. House, who played House?
Go ahead. I can't do it.
Jeffrey.
Anyway, he plays jazz piano.
Anyway,
He's great. Yeah, he's really good.
Oh God, names.
I've heard Jamie Foxx play jazz piano.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of actors who are good musicians out
Kevin
there.
Spacey plays.
Kevin Spacey, yes, he sings.
He sings.
He sings. If they would all do this more, it might elevate
That's right.
awareness about jazz to the greater public, and that's what they all need to do. I guess I should write everybody.
Yes.
need
Get
to
them
do
all
this.
to come and appear at your next performance.
Does violin
Together.
lead itself into jazz? Violin, jazz.
Oh,
Regina
absolutely.
Carter.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
She's great.
She's Regina Carter, and there's
I think that's wonderful.
Patrice Rushen. There's all kind of people.
Well, Nicole Yarling is a local.
Exactly.
She's a jazz violinist and vocalist. Yeah.
Way back, there was a jazz violinist called Noel Pointer that I just
Stephen Grappelli.
loved.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, is it safe to say that jazz as an art form is safe? I mean, it's safe for to survive for the next 100 years.
I think so, because you've got all these kids that are being educated in college programs and everything, and granted, a lot of them might end up being band directors, but they know jazz, so they might have a jazz band in their school, in their high school or middle school. So I think it'll exist. It might not be America's most popular art form because, as we see, music is always evolving, but I think it'll always be around. Just like, classical music hasn't died,
I think we're almost out of time, but I think that's interesting in that, because there's so many other art forms that become more popular or rise, to the top of popularity, but there are jazz musicians that we revere in this country, like Dizzy Gillespie and Duke Ellington, and all these people, even Miles Davis. So even though we know we might not have people flocking, to jazz concerts or I mean, there's a core audience for jazz, of course, but the average millennial isn't, buying a ticket, but those are the ones that we have to reach.
That's
right. So, thank you so much. I thought this was just so, I don't know, there's a lot of information that you provided that I think a lot of people wouldn't have. What's your website?
It's www.goldcoastjazz.org.
Yes.
And you can find out all of our information, all of our programs.
Thank you.
How to donate. How to donate.
And you can find out about any of the things that are going on in South Florida by visiting floridatheateronstage.com. Thank you for joining us here tonight. Thank our panel and thank our guests very much. We look forward to seeing you here next week on Spotlight on the Arts.
Thank you.